Lucy retreated to the stockroom and returned with half a dozen copies of Waiting for Mr. Darcy, which she set on the table in front of the author. "When you're done, I'll drive you back to the hotel," she offered. Jane, who had been counting the cash drawer, looked up. "Lucy, I can drive Miss Gladstone back to her hotel," she said. "Why don't you go home?" Lucy glanced at Melody, who was signing the last of the books. "You're sure?" she asked Jane. "I don't care which one of you drives me," said Melody, snapping the cap back on the pen she'd used to sign the books. "But let's get going. I've got to be on a plane for Columbus or Detroit or some other shithole first thing in the morning." "I'm quite sure," Jane told Lucy. "You go on. I'll see you in the morning. Thank you for all your work on the event." "No problem," said Lucy. She turned to Melody. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It was nice to meet you." The woman nodded but said nothing. After a short pause, during which it became obvious that Melody had no intention of returning Lucy's thanks, Lucy shot Jane a look. "See you tomorrow," she said, and she turned and walked to the front door. "I'm ready to go," said Melody, standing and putting on her coat before Lucy had even shut the door behind her. Jane looked at the woman and smiled. "Well then," she said, "let's tarry no longer in the parlour of joy." Melody stared at her. "My car is out back," said Jane. "I'll just get my coat." A few minutes later, they were sitting in Jane's beat-up Volvo wagon, waiting for the heat to kick in. Melody rubbed her hands together. "How old is this thing, anyway?" she asked dismissively. "You should never ask a lady her age," Jane said primly, earning a peculiar look from Melody. She put the car into gear and pulled out of the lot. As they drove through the snowy streets of downtown Brixton, Melody looked out the window. "This place is so boring," she said. "How can you stand living here?" "I find its unassuming character charming," Jane answered. "If I had to live in a place like this, I would absolutely die," Melody continued. "When I saw my tour itinerary, I was like, Brixton? Where the hell is Brixton?" "Lucy went to a lot of trouble to get you here," Jane informed her, "and I think the turnout was quite impressive, don't you?" Melody shrugged. "It was nothing compared to the New York reading," she said. "We had to turn people away from that one." "Oh, the horror," Jane said sympathetically. "Right," Melody agreed. "Anyway, I guess I'm probably the biggest thing to ever come through here, so at least I added a little excitement to those people's lives." "We're ever so thankful you agreed to grace us," said Jane. "I'm sure we'll be talking about it for months." "I just can't wait to get back to civilization," Melody said, sighing. "That's it," Jane thought. She suddenly turned off the main street and headed down a quiet side lane. "The hotel is that way," Melody protested. "This is a shortcut," said Jane curtly. At the end of the street, she pulled the car to the side and stopped in front of a house that blinked red and green with Christmas lights. On the lawn, a life-size Mary and Joseph stared at the car. Behind them, Santa, Frosty, and Rudolph gazed rapturously down at the baby Jesus asleep in his plastic manger. Giant candy canes provided a backdrop for 3 elves bearing gaily wrapped packages. "Where are we?" Melody asked. "What are we doing here?" "I just need to take care of a little errand," said Jane. She unfastened her seatbelt and leaned toward her passenger, who was too busy looking at the bizarre nativity scene to notice. As Jane opened her mouth, the 2 fangs secreted in her upper jaw slipped from their bony sheaths and clicked into place. When her lips connected with Melody's neck, Melody jumped and gave a little scream, which was cut short as Jane pushed the young woman's face against her own coat and held it there as the blood began to flow past her lips.